mechanized army of circuitry and metal, cold and emotionless, carry out tasks without conscience.
You remember the 90s? Well, unless you grew up in that time, then no, you probably don't. And BuzzFeed will not let you think otherwise. Every 20-something thinks the 90s were this golden age when everything was amazing. Movies rented from Blockbuster had to be stuffed in a machine to be rewound because that dick that had it before you never did it. Blockbuster was, around. And the only thing that most people used the internet for was to check their email and feel loved.
You've got mail.
No, AOL. I've got you. If there's definitely one thing from my childhood in the 90s that I loved, it was Toonami, Cartoon Network's action show block that ran for years and exposed the mainstream West to the wonders of Japanese animation. Every weekday afternoon from 4 to 6 p.m. was game time, baby. Nothing got me more pumped the idea of getting to come home, grab some cheese and crackers, and watch shows like Voltron, Gundam Wing, and Sailor Moon. And man, everybody loved these shows. It didn't matter who you were. That beefed up 5th grader that got held back one too many times and always stuffed your head in the toilet. Every time that kid chucked a football, he pictured that pigskin turning into a magical weapon while he internally screamed, "Moon Tiara Magic." But of all the great shows that came on during those 2 hours every day, there was one that stuck with me more than any other, and that show was called Robotech. Robotech was a space opera anime series that was about humanity's war against 50-foot-tall humanoid aliens called the Zentradi, who they fought using their own 50-foot-tall transforming mecha airplanes called Veritex. The show mainly followed the adventures of a single human retrofitted alien spaceship referred to as the SDF-1 and its inhabitants who accidentally end up on the far side of the galaxy at the beginning of the series and now have to get home. The show had everything: cool mechs, an interesting mature plot, a love story, giant aliens that didn't understand the concept of music and culture. I freaking love this show. You can only imagine my surprise when years later I looked up more info on the show and discovered the Japanese cartoon called Robotech didn't actually exist. Well, in a manner of speaking. Turns out that in the 80s, a company called Harmony Gold acquired the rights to an anime series called Super Dimensional Fortress Macross, and they wanted to localize it for American television. Only problem they were facing was they also wanted the show for weekday syndication. In other words, they wanted the show to air every day like other Western cartoon shows. Problem here is that Macross only had about 36 episodes in the series, so the show would only last about a month and a half before it ran out of episodes. Harmony Gold's solution is one that's still kind of controversial to this day. They decided to take 3 completely different television shows, those being Macross, Southern Dimensional Cross, and Mosspedia, and merge them into one anime Frankenstein monster that became known as Robotech. Western companies changed the content of an anime wasn't something unique to Robotech. All kinds of things got rewritten or censored in those days.
It seems so long ago, my first kiss.
I remember it vividly. It was with Brad, the cutest guy in the school. My sweet Brad. I wonder where he is today.
Gay, 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 gay.
We all know of the firm American Red, White, and Blue hand of 4Kids Entertainment, and similar situations like Robotech occurred with other Japanese shows brought to America, like Power Rangers and Voltron. But Robotech was always one that stuck out to me, especially considering that it was partially thanks to Robotech's popularity that more anime was being dubbed and brought to the West. So say what you want about their methods, but you should thank old Grandpappy Robotech for your body pillows. So at this point you're probably wondering why I'm talking so much about anime and cartoons on a video game channel. Well, like I said, I'm a pretty big Robotech fan, and also I'm a pretty big fan of Macross now. And just like any other franchise, these things get spin-off content. So, this is Robotech Battlecry. Robotech Battlecry is a 2002 video game released on multiple platforms and developed by Vicious Cycle, who developed other phenomenal hits like Dora the Explorer, Journey to the Purple Planet, and 3 Ben 10 games. Ooh. The game eschews following the main story and cast of the main series, instead follows a young pilot named Jack Archer. TV Tropes refers to this kind of game as an elsewhere fic, being a story that takes place in the same universe as the series, but not really having anything to do with the main plot. And this is painfully true. The first couple of missions take place in the iconic scenes of the show, like when the Zentradi first arrive on Earth, or when the SDF-1 finally makes it back home, finally culminating with the climactic final battle between humanity and the Zentradi. After that, the entire game takes place within the Reconstruction era, which was about the last 6 episodes of the Macross saga from the anime, where the remaining humans and Zentradi try to find a way to coexist together. Jack joins up with the military division referred to as the Robotech Defense Force, and the rest of the game deals with him and the RDF fighting a fringe Zentradi militia that wants to incite war against humanity again. Robotech Battlecry is an interesting game. It's one part third-person mech shooter, one part flight simulator, and about 10 parts escort missions. Each mission has you in control of your Veritech fighter, which is a transforming vehicle that can switch between plane, robot, and a mix of in between. Each form has its own strengths and weaknesses you can manipulate to your advantage to overcome the enemy and save the day. And honestly, this is where Battlecry really shines the brightest. The controls are tight, each form feels unique and not difficult to use, and the transformation from one form to another is lightning quick. Your main gun can overheat but has no ammo, and your missiles will slowly replenish themselves after use, so you rarely have a reason to stop shooting. Just like the show, Battlecry encourages you to launch enough missiles at once to flatten a small village, and overall the combat feels very fast-paced and anime-like. Also, the game cel-shaded to give it a cartoon feel, which was a nice touch. If the creators set out to emulate the TV show in appearance, they definitely succeeded. Battlecry is something of an easy-to-use, challenging-to-master gameplay style. There are several situations where you might just want to stay in one form for an entire mission, such as when you're in a dogfight and it seems like fighter is your only real option. But by taking advantage of your other forms, you become a lot more versatile and deadly. Do you need to turn on a dime as a fighter? Go Battloid. Need to stay near your target but blast things with some firepower? Guardian. Need to cross the map quick? Fighter. You might think that constantly switching between forms get annoying, but it never really does. The combat's fast-paced and exciting. It's just too bad a majority of the actual missions are not quite as fun. You probably haven't forgotten my comment about escort missions, but if you have, let me reiterate. Robotech Battlecry has escort missions. A lot of escort missions. In fact, I can only think of a handful of missions that don't require you to protect some paper-thin building or airplane that can't fight back. It makes sense to why this game would be structured this way. You're part of the Robotech Defense Force, not the Robotech Hit Squad Force. Your job throughout the game is to protect people who can't protect themselves, so that's what you gotta do. But nobody likes escort missions. They are one of the most single-hated video game mechanics there are. Not to mention that some of these escort missions are just ludicrous in design. The worst offenders are when the game sends you to defend a spy plane for a set period of time. Alone. I mean, really? You guys don't think this is just maybe it's a little bit more crucial that you could spare a few more fighters to help me?
Well, yeah, it is a spy plane. Maybe they want you to be sneaky and not alert the enemy.
Oh yeah? Well, look how well that's turning out. I mean, look at this. This is insanity. What conceivable defense am I supposed to form here? What kind of strategy am I supposed to be enacting when hey, where the hell are you going? An escort mission is normally an unexpected change in gameplay. It's often treated as a temporary scenario that forces a player to quickly adapt to a new situation and use their abilities in a different way than before. You're no longer just trying to kill everything in the room as quickly as possible to survive, you're also trying to do it in a way where a person who is next to you remains safe. For a long time, escort missions were always hailed as being the worst part of a game, but they normally had the benefit of being temporary occurrences. Battlecry instead has them make up the bulk of its main game. Several more modern games that use escort mission scenarios now have invented means to where whoever you're carrying around isn't simply the load. They often have ways to help you fight and survive, and in some cases it can be argued that you are the one being escorted by them. Can't really blame this kind of thing in the time period though, because Ico came out a whole year before Battlecry, and that game has nothing but one long escort mission. But Ico succeeded where Battlecry failed because the person you were escorting was something that you became emotionally invested in. I'm not emotionally invested in spy planes. I mean, we went out for a drink once, but there was no connection. Not only that, but when the game sends you backup in the form of an ally, it's still just an escort mission disguised, because if they die, you automatically fail. So it's an escort mission dressed up like the cavalry. It'd be like if Gandalf came riding in at the end of Lord of the Rings and turned around immediately and said, "Help, Fox, get this guy off me." What about Battlecry's story and presentation itself? Well, it's okay. The game was made in mind for Robotech fans naturally, so it'd be hard to feel invested otherwise. But even as a Robotech fan, I feel it's kind of odd that they made the game about a completely original character and had the bulk of the game take place outside of canon. It's funny because I remember a reprint of the novels of the show going around at the time the game came out, and it was advertised as the official tie-in to the exciting new Robotech games. Yeah, that must have been talking about a different one because it's not this game. The game takes place over a few chapters with multiple missions in each. However, only a few of the missions are actually plot related. Everything else is Jack's day on the job as he helps people on the frontier. It's not a bad story, but it's one that has all its major parts spread so thin that so much of the game just feels like filler, and very few levels and characters feel memorable. I mean, you don't even meet the main villain of the game, Zoral, until the final mission. There just isn't enough meat to develop the side characters aside from their personality quirks. Kiora is a psycho, Commander Chase is your standard mission control lady, and your friend Hiro hates Zentradi. Well, actually, that last one does get some development. You fight alongside Hiro for several missions, and it gets more and more vengeful at the attacking Zentradi, until it culminates in a scene where he wants to put down a helpless soldier in cold blood. Jack steps in to stop him since he thinks it's murder and not justice, and the two end up fighting. And you know, it does set the scene for a potentially emotion-driven boss fight between comrades, which is immediately spoiled when you realize it's another freaking escort mission! It's also weird with how the story is written this way because the game was basically a love letter to Robotech fans. There's multiple paint jobs for your fighter that are from the series, the music and sound effects are all ripped straight from the show, and the game features cel-shaded graphics to give the presentation of a cartoon. Even all the main voice actors from the show came back in this game, and they all ham it up as much as they did in the series. The voice acting and writing is cheesy, but endearing, especially when it comes to Jack, considering that nobody takes his one-liners seriously.
So, why do they call it ambush hills again? Come back when you have some skills, yeah? If that's what it takes to kick you off my planet, then so be it.
Developers also made sure to take advantage of the old voice talent coming back by putting in cameos of all their old characters, like Roy, Rick, Lisa, and Minmay.
Hi, Jack. Nice to meet you.
Wow, it's really you.
In fact, the only one who doesn't make a cameo with their actor is Max Sterling, which is odd considering his voice actor Cam Clark voices Jack. I guess what I mean by weird is that Robotech Battlecry didn't adapt most of the main themes from the show into the game's story. Battlecry is an action game, front and foremost, but while Robotech and Macross were both space operas, they also had more emphasis on the opera rather than the space. One of the main plot points of the series was that the Zentradi couldn't understand things like music and love. One of the most iconic scenes in the series is when two of the main characters are captured by the Zentradi and they kiss, completely freaking out the entire room of alien giants. Humanity also manages to weaponize the power of music against the Zentradi by blasting pop music sung by Lin Minmay, one of the earliest examples of an anime idol singer. None of this ever really comes up in Battlecry, it's just shooty shooty bang bang until you win the mission. And I'm not saying there should have been like a Minmay rhythm game or something like that, it's just somewhat strange when the game makes so much of an effort to be a true homage to the show, yet they never really touched on these themes. The closest they get to is a kind of a joke about it in a fight when one of the main villains doesn't understand the concept of love.
It's not love you're feeling, Kiora. We Micronians call that psychosis.
At the end of the day, Robotech Battlecry isn't really a bad game per se, but it definitely wasn't great. I mean, I probably wouldn't have liked it as much if I wasn't already a fan of the series. The game played well, it was a lot of fun to fly around and transform into a bunch of different stuff, but the overabundance of escort missions in the game and annoying objectives just really brought it down. As for whatever happened to Robotech the series, that's another story altogether. Harmony Gold actually made plans to continue the series in the form of Robotech 2, The Sentinels. This is originally going to be a show that followed the characters from the Macross arc of the original. Unfortunately, the animation studio that was making it for them in Japan went bankrupt, so only 3 episodes were ever produced. Sentinels did continue on in comic book form, but eventually that ended as well, and years later Sentinels would be semi-retconned with the production of a straight-to-DVD movie, Robotech Shadow Chronicles, which was now considered the true sequel to the series. Meanwhile, Macross had been doing quite well. There's been multiple shows in the series, including a new one planned for 2016. We'll never see any of that though, mostly because nobody seems to know who owns the English rights to Macross merchandise anymore. Robotech was one of my favorite shows as a kid, and although it hasn't really aged well over the 20 or 30 years since it was released, it is partially responsible for all the anime that we now have here in the West. So, I salute you, Robotech. You may be an abomination of 80s dubbing, but you are still dear to my heart.
Do you want the mustache on or off?
Off, please.
Too bad.